Before I start on the next chapter of the Dawn of the Dhamma, just to pass this around. This is the little book I mentioned the other day, The Mountains of Tibet, about the little child, the little boy who starts off flying his kite. In a tiny village in a valley high in the mountains of Tibet, a little boy was born. He loved to fly kites. And so it's a very short book, but it's one of the great explanations on the whole rebirth process. So anyway, pass that around, look at it. We come to chapter 16, and this is called What Kondanna Knew. And the Pali for this chapter is Iddhamavocha Bhagava Attamana Panchavagya Bhikkhu Bhagavato Bhasitang Abhinantung Imasmincha Panaveya Karanasming Panyamane Ayasamato Kondanyatsa Virajang Vi Tamalang Dhammachakung Udapadi Yan Kinchi Samudaya Dhammang Sabantang Nirodha Tamanti. And the English translation for that is, Thus spoke the Blessed One, and the group of 5 bhikkhus were gladdened, and they approved of his words. Now, while this discourse was being delivered, the untarnished and clear insight into Dhamma arose in the Venerable Kondanna, thus: Whatever has the nature to arise has the nature to cease. And the picture here has gone back to a little more of a Celtic feeling. You've got some Celtic knotwork coming in around the edges once more, and you have the figure of Kondanna in the center with a big eye in the middle of his chest, and then the other 4 of the 5 friends, the Panchavaggi. So you have Kondanna, Vappa, Badiya, Mahanama, and Asaji, the other 4, and then these different sections of the circle in the center. Then the text will explain the imagery there, but it looks very much like the 6 realms of existence that is being described according to the traditional pattern of the Bhavachaka, and obviously with Ajahn Sucitto's own unique take on that. There's a hungry ghost there, there's a Devata, there's an Asura, and a few hell beings, some animals and some humans. So this looks very much like he's going to explore this in terms of the 6 realms of existence. When the Buddha finished speaking, the group of 5 were delighted by the scope and the clarity of his teaching. Now, during the course of this talk, there arose in Venerable Kondanna the clear and pure seeing of the Dhamma. Quote, that whatever has the nature to arise has the nature to cease. This does not mean that he had a spectacular vision. Here, the view of wisdom is summed up in the simple phrase, whatever has the nature to arise also has the nature to cease. That's the way it dawned on Kondanna. It's also a very common way that the insight into to Dhamma is characterized. This is not full enlightenment, but rather the way that the stream entry is very often described. So it's similarly with Venerable Sariputta when he met Asaji, one of the original 5, and that had an exchange with Venerable Asaji on the street. Then, as the Venerable Asaji spoke to him, then the insight into Dhamma arose in the wanderer Sariputta, and he became a stream enterer at that time, and it's characterized in the same way. Yankinchi samudaya dhammang sabantang nirodha tamanti. Now, his realization was not just a mimicking of what the Buddha had said. It's not to be realized through the logic of words, but only by putting into practice what has been said about dukkha, attachment, and desire. This is why Kondanna's utterance is profound. He insightfully, gnostically, saw the holding onto the world wherein dukkha is conditioned and is let go of. I'll read that again. This is why Kondanna's utterance is profound. He insightfully, gnostically, saw the holding on to the world wherein dukkha is conditioned and is let go of. In order to recognize that everything, even the very thoughts and emotions that one has, just comes and goes, means that there is dispassion and detachment, a clear seeing of how things work. It's also one of these very interesting instances where something that is on the conceptual level is very matter-of-fact and ordinary. What goes up must come down. What begins ends. A 3-year-old kid can understand that. If it's begun, it's going to end. If it goes up, what goes up must come down. And so, on an intellectual level, it's something that is extremely simple, straightforward to comprehend as a concept, but to see it clearly is a whole different thing altogether, because it's in a way what makes it a characteristic of the breakthrough to stream entry is that the full implications of that are realized, so that, the things that I like, they're going to change. The things that I dislike, they're going to change. The things that I think are mine are going to change. The things I think that belong to other people are going to change. And the classical way of developing wisdom, and if you're familiar with Luang Por Chah's teachings in particular, and Luang Por Sumedho, that development of the anicca sanya, or the perception of impermanence, or the perception of uncertainty, is the most commonly, most often repeated method of developing insight, to remember everything's uncertain. And when Ajahn Chah, in his inimitable way, in one of his teachings, he suggests the method of simply just saying, not sure, whatever you experience, whether it's a pain in your leg, whether it's a beautiful taste, whether it's a thought passing through your mind, or whether it's a family crisis, just to remember it's uncertain. Every kind of judgment that the mind makes, just to keep saying to it, not sure, not sure, not sure, not sure, as almost like a mantra, that every experience is met with not sure. Every judgment is not, you say not sure. Because what it's respecting is that our judgments, our perceptions, our thoughts, our concepts, these can only be the most fragile and partial skim. Like what we're seeing now, you might think, well, I can see a very clear picture of the sala. I can hear these words very distinctly. I can perceive the whole thing. But that's only because we're used to seeing 0.000000001% of reality. So we call that everything, like the frog in the well. It's like, well, this is the whole world. I mean, there isn't any other world. This is it, because all it's ever seen is the limits of the well. So in exactly the same way, we call this reality because we can't see the other 99.99999999999% of the way things are. So our little version of it is what we call real. But this is just the tiniest fragment. Like I was giving the image about if you compare a stick figure of a person to everything that's ever been known and said about the human condition, it's that kind of a percentage. Or another simile the Buddha used. He reached down and scratched the ground and said, "What is greater, the amount of dirt under my fingernail or the great earth?" Well, Venerable Sir, the amount of dirt under your fingernail is very small, and the great earth is very, very large. So, and in that instance, what he was saying was the amount of suffering that one who has made the breakthrough to stream entry can expect to experience is comparable to the dirt under my fingernail, whereas the amount of suffering that one who has not made the breakthrough to stream entry can expect to experience is comparable to the great earth. Or they're picking up the handful of leaves from the forest floor, saying, what do you think is greater, the amount of leaves in my hand or the leaves in all the trees in this big forest? Oh, Venerable Sir, the number of leaves in your hand is very small, and the leaves in the forest is very, very great, that great number. And the Buddha says, so, what I know, or what is knowable, is comparable to the leaves in the forest. What I teach is just comparable to the leaves in my hand. So, he did teach a lot of stuff. You've got the whole Tripitaka of his teachings, and that's just comparable to a few leaves. But the every leaf in the forest is comparable to what he knew, and not just in terms of information or memory, but that direct knowing of all of the fundamental, profound qualities of reality. So when you really know that everything that arises passes away, then that changes the way that things are seen. Because in a sutta to Meghiya, when the Buddha's giving advice to this young monk who was having struggles with his meditation, he said to develop wisdom, you should investigate anicca, because when anicca is truly seen, then that leads to the insight into anatta, because everything that we think of as ourself is impermanent. Therefore, what we think of as I and me and mine is nothing solid or substantial. And said, so that developing the insight into impermanence leads to the development of insight into anatta, and frees the heart from the conceit of identity, asmimana. And so when the heart is freed from asmimana, from the conceit I am, that is nibbana here and now. So it's a very direct relationship through understanding anicca. So it's in a way that the heart appreciates the full implications of all that arises passes away. And those of you who've listened to many of Luang Por Sumedho's Dhamma talks, particularly from back in the 80s, it was for 2 or 3 years, that was his constant theme. He would say, what is it that Buddhas know that unenlightened beings don't know? And after a few runs of this, we all knew the answer. What Buddhas know is not, all the dimensions of the cosmos, but he'd say, what Buddhas know that unenlightened beings don't know is that all that arises passes away and is not self. That's what Buddhas know. Attachment means that we give thoughts or feelings a significance that they would not have if they were seen as passing phenomena. With attachment, there is no independence from the immediate circumstances, no space to see things objectively. So we go up with the ups and down with the downs, falling into despair about being depressed, and then we languish in that mood. Or perhaps we try to deny our depression. If we manage to deny and bury it, that depression can become embedded in the psyche and manifest as a negative or cynical view of life. If we try to blot out the dark side of our feelings with forced highs, we may end up frantically grasping at the sensory world in order to distract ourselves and prevent more depression. If we fail to notice that the highs, the gains and the happiness are impermanent, we feel disappointed when they end. Our heavens condition our hells, and our hells are strengthened by the memory or the possibility of heaven somewhere out of reach. To know in the heart that sadness and pain are impermanent is a profound relief from the suffering they bring, and from the karma of trying to avoid that suffering. Such was Kondanna's insight. Also, instead of grasping and assuming, I thought that, this is my idea, what a great insight, he recognized that those very thoughts and perceptions arise, mature, wane, and end. So there's no attachment to the insight. Even the emotional delight is, after all, something that arises and ceases. This coolness leaves the mind very clear and free from preoccupation or statements about me having attained something. Its lasting value is that it brings us to liberation from self-view. So in the other day I was talking about stream entry being qualified as faith in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, and that was the teaching that Buddha gave, talking about Sarakani, and so that way of saying stream entry is characterized by that unwavering faith. But also, and very commonly, the stream entry is qualified or characterized by the breakthrough of the first 3 of what are called the 10 fetters, or the Sangyojana. So the first 3 are Sakkaya Ditthi, self-view, that's the I am the body, I am the personality, I am the owner of these memories, feelings, it's me, this individual person who's making these choices and having these highs and lows. So Sakkaya Ditthi is that what they call personality view or self-view, and right in the word, the way the word is put together tells you that Sat means true or real, Kaya the body or the person, ditthi view, the view of the real person. Then the second one is Silappata Paramasa, which is often translated as something like attachment to rites and rituals, or attachment to rules and conventions, and it's the taking of human structures and agreements and behaviors as being something intrinsically, in terms of religion, something that's purifying or liberating. So believing that if you bathe in the river Ganges, then it's going to wash away all your bad karma, or that if you get baptized by the priest, then it makes you a Christian permanently, or if you happen to be born into a Jewish family, it makes you Jewish forever, and such like. So that's all just Silappata Paramasa, and so that seeing that that religious principles, but also things, Ajahn Chah would expand it to include things like the side of the road that you drive on, or the way that money is given value, that the way ink is printed on a piece of paper. They say this is worth 100 baht or 1,000 baht, because of the pattern of ink on a piece of paper, saying that it's not really worth 100 baht, it's not really 1,000 baht, it's signifying a human agreement. There really isn't any value there. It's just because we agree to give it value. Like if you're playing Monopoly, Monopoly money has value when you're playing Monopoly. When the game's over, the money has no value. The third is Vichikicha, which is skeptical doubt. So particularly the doubt, which is the third of the fetters, means doubt about what's the path and what is not the path. So it's not a doubt about what to have for supper tonight, or whether you should join the monastery or leave the monastery, or there's all the kinds of things that everyday doubts that we might have, or questions. But it's that sense of knowing what the path is, and that's in a way the certainty that is the third element of the breakthrough. So then stream entry is also known as the breakthrough, and then that term I was describing the other day of the change of lineage, the gotrabu, that is also another way that the same sort of shift of perspective is characterized. And at stream entry, also according to Buddhist psychology and cosmology, there's various things that occur once stream entry has been realized, and the stream that's being entered is the Eightfold Path. When the Buddha's asked, the stream, what is the stream? He says the Eightfold Path is that stream. So when the stream entry is realized, then that means that the gates to the lower realms are closed, so that you can't be reborn as an animal or as a hungry ghost or in the hell realms. So that's a benefit. And then there is no more than 7 lifetimes. Enlightenment, total liberation is guaranteed within 7 lifetimes. So that's another benefit. And so that's why the Buddha used this symbol of the simile of the fingernail scratching the ground and saying, in 7 lifetimes, the maximum amount of dukkha you can experience is proportional to the dirt under your fingernail, whereas if you haven't made the breakthrough, then you can keep going for another 10,000 million cycles of big bangs and big crunches, and keep being reborn endlessly. Therefore, as much dukkha as there is to making up the body of the whole planet. So we go on to the painting. This painting attempts to make a little more out of that cool insight. Whatever has the nature to arise has the nature to pass away. The theme depicted in the center of the picture is the changing nature of all phenomena. To be more fully conscious of the phenomenal world involves a deepening of the mind's receptivity. This leads to a deepening of awareness rather than an increase in the analytical framework by which one classifies and remains separate from phenomena. In the course of exploring consciousness, a huge amount of psychological and emotional conditioning comes to light. It is the result, vipaka, of kamma, or action, in the near or remote past. This conditioning so much affects our experience of the world that it can no longer be separated from that experience. Kamma and its results define our personal world, quote unquote, the realm of conscious experience. This world is called loka in Pali, to distinguish it from the objective world, called Jagati. So like the planet would be Jagati, and Loka is a realm of existence. The catalysts of time and place and particular events tend to trigger off experiences of elation, despair, contentment, or inferiority, whose roots are in the karma-saturated consciousness. Those who begin to investigate the mind can often experience this whole range of moods and feelings while apparently doing nothing special. And what he's referring to there is we have in these pictures of the 6 realms of existence, which he'll get on to speaking about, is that these moods, so that when you're happy and the mind is excited and inspired and bright, then that's like being born in the heavenly realm. And if you're angry and in a state of conflict and hatred, then that's like being in the hell realm. The realm of the hungry ghost is the realm of addiction, always wanting another drink or another smoke or wanting to have something to eat or to talk with someone, to the endless hunger of the hungry ghost. The animal realm is the realm of instinctual reaction, protecting your territory, compelled towards finding food or procreating or fending off opponents and such like. The blind reactivity of instinct is the animal realm. Talking like that, and many people in the West get very upset. So you've never met my dog. My dog is not like that. My dog is very spiritual. Yeah, please, Ajahn, you shouldn't say that. It's even worse in England than it is in California. So there is a deep identification with pets, and people say this is no ordinary pet, Ajahn. In fact, the word pet is really quite offensive. She's a member of the family, really. So, and then, or people say, I wouldn't mind being reborn as a cat, or I'd be very happy. Dogs have a great time. I really like to be born as a dog. So, when people would say that, when the Westerners would say that to Lumpur Cha, he'd go, have you seen what the dog's life is like in the village? And so being reborn as a golden retriever in the home counties might be quite nice. But if you're going to be reborn as a dog, don't do it in India or Southeast Asia or China or pretty much anywhere except Europe or North America. So that there's an idealization of the animal world, but if you really look at how what animal life is like, it's as the saying goes, nasty, brutish, and short. You don't see very many aged animals walking around. How many of you have seen pigeons that don't fly? Or grey feathered pigeons? Getting a bit old, so just walk instead of flying. No. As soon as you can't fly, you get eaten. As soon as you can't make it, then you starve. So it's a nasty, brutish, and short. And if you are offended by those words, and you want to prove that your pet is actually a very, very spiritual being, I'm open to to your attempts to persuade me. I grew up in a family of dog lovers and horse riders, so I grew up very close to the animal realm. And one time, many years ago, when Master Hua was visiting England, and he was going down to a Chinese restaurant in London that were offering a meal to him and his whole community, and I went along as a tour guide, this coach that we hired for them, and sort of giving commentaries about the London and talking about English history and Henry VIII and the monasteries and so on. Anyway, we stopped off before we got to the restaurant in London. We stopped off at the house of these lay people, and they had this very sort of fluffy little white dog. And so this discussion arose about what kind of a breed it was. I forget, it was something like a Pomeranian or a Bichon Frise, and so because I grew up in a house, both my parents were dog breeders, and my father used to judge dog shows and such. So I learned how to recognize most dog breeds just by osmosis, just by being around it. So I said, "Oh, it's a Pomeranian." And so the people said, "Well, how did you know that, or what makes you say that?" And so I mentioned that my father was a dog judge, and that I grew up in a family of dog lovers, and so one of them translated this to Master Hua and said, Ajahn Amaro's father's an expert in dogs, and his comment was immediately, but does he know why they were born as dogs? And I think, probably not. It's a very good response. In the practice of insight, we see that the felt quality of an experience is variable. One person can react to another as menacing. A second would find that person charming. Our feelings and perceptions of the world fluctuate not only between different beings, but also within ourselves. Whatever change we perceive in the external world is small compared to the minute-by-minute or even faster way that the realms of mental perception and mood can change. Processes within consciousness are in a constant state of arising and ceasing to generate new forms. The very complexity and variety of that flow of phenomena is mesmerizing. It keeps us from noticing that it has the nature to arise and cease. However, although it changes, the world as an experience in mental consciousness can be contemplated and understood clearly as a number of realms. It's also interesting, a couple of points there. One, that the Buddha said, if you want to attach to something as being yourself, it's much better to attach to the body as being self rather than the mind, because we want to attach to something, because the body is around in some form or other for like 50 years, 80 years, 100 years, but the mind is ever changing, evanescent, like a monkey jumping through the branches of a tree, just grabbing one branch after another after another. It never ceases for a second. So if you want to attach to something, then attach to the body more than the mind, because it's much more reliable. Also, there's a number of places when defining what the world is, loka, what is loka, what is the world? And the Buddha says that by which one is a perceiver of the world and a knower of a conceiver of the world, that is what is called the world in the Buddha Sasana. So rather than the world being buildings, people, trees, rocks, sky, water, planets, stars, the world is your mind's representation of the world, that through which the mind is the perceiver of the world and the conceiver of the world. That is called the world. So in the word loka, the realm, is literally and explained as that it's the mind's representation of the world. So it doesn't place it as a sort of a separate external objective reality, but rather you can only sensibly talk about your experience of the world rather than the real world out there. So in essence, the Buddha was a phenomenologist. Like you have these European philosophers like Husserl and such that called that way of looking at things phenomenology, is looking at the phenomena of experience. Like that's all we can say about the world, is that I have the perception here, and I call this seeing hand, but that's what's really there can't be expressed. We can only describe what our experience is, but to say what's really there is beyond our scope. We can only talk about, sensibly, we can only talk about what is perceived, and the rest we have to leave alone. So, I don't know if the Buddha was the first phenomenologist, but it's really clear that's how he related to it, that is talking very directly about our experience and how the mind perceives and conceives the world. That's all we can know of the world. And then the more the mind is awake, then the more that the concepts and the conceivings and perceivings of the mind will overlap and mesh harmoniously with the perceivings and conceivings of people around us. And when someone is crazy or someone is deluded, then that's where their version of the world does not cohere, does not match the perceptions of those around them. That we literally say they're lost in their own world, or they're caught up in their own world, or they're paranoid, they're seeing things that are really not there because others around them can't see the same things, even though to them it might be absolutely real. Like if I was deluded or paranoid, I might say, well, the positioning of absolutely everybody, and the relationship of the colours of people's clothes in the exact spots that people are sitting in the room, this is actually a coded message from this tribe of beings that live on a planet in the solar system of Alpha Centauri. It's a message that I'm being given. I know it's true. And if I was deluded, I might believe that that purple jumper, and that tracksuit with the 3 stripes on both arms, and then the orange shirt, and then the whites here, and the ochre browns here, and then the carpets are just all these special messages that I'm being given. And people do believe that. It's not uncommon. The positioning of the sheep in the field, as you walk by. Oh, I have to go back. I'm being told I have to. It's not safe to go further. The sheep are telling me. And when we meet someone who's having those experiences, we know that they're experiencing a world that we're not. They're kind of sheep, aren't they? Or maybe he just wore an orange shirt because it's his only clean shirt. It's nothing about anybody from Alpha Centauri. No. I can tell. So that process of wisdom, the more that fully the mind is attuned to recognizing, this is what the mind is representing, this is only my mind's version of reality, then we're much more able to understand that other people have a different version, and thereby we can harmonize with them. So even if you meet with somebody who's deluded or has those kind of paranoid or colorful perceptions, you don't have to oppose them, you don't have to argue with them, you can simply respect, that's their version of reality, they're getting messages from the sheep in the field. Fine. I don't know what those messages are that they're receiving, but let's just carry on with our walk. And if they need to turn back, let's just walk, just turn back. Do it that way. So the more the mind is awake to the fact that the world is what the mind perceives and conceives, then we find that we're able to mesh and harmonize with others much more easily and fully. So, to carry on. However, although it changes, the world as an experience in mental consciousness can be contemplated and understood clearly as a number of realms. The world of ordinary consciousness, that which is affected by sense desire, can be classified as 6-fold, and appearing within a larger world system, or galaxy, of birth and death. This galaxy includes everything that has the will to become something, to exist as a self, even including those beings who seek out formless realms of jhana. And that's a footnote saying, i.e. resulting in birth in the Brahma Loka, like in the heavenly Brahma realms. The highest of the Brahma realms are called the Arupa Loka. The beings there have only got mental factors. They only have nama. They don't have any rupa. They're formless. Arupa means formless. So their beings in those realms only have mind. They have no form whatsoever, either subtle or physical. However, this painting is limited to the presentation of the worlds within the sensory sphere, the material sphere, in which we can take birth. It's called the 6 realms of existence. Traditionally, these 6 realms are painted encircled by the 12 links of dependent origination, which I explained in the Second Noble Truth. The tradition dates back to the time of the Buddha, when one of his chief disciples, Mahamoggallana Thera, who was a specialist in psychic powers, made frequent visits to the various heaven and hell realms. The story goes that he employed supernormal powers in order to learn how the beings in each of those realms experience states of happiness or anguish, dependent on their actions in a previous life. They had to stay there until the vipaka, the effect, was exhausted, whereupon they would take birth in another plane. Even the happy realms presented a tenuous security from the restless movement of the whole cycle of existence, or samsara, which literally means endless wandering, samsara. He explained all that he had seen, and it was felt that people should be informed about this. So it was suggested that a picture be made, and copies hung up in the entrance of every monastery for all to see. Generally, the painting shows Yama, the ruler of the dead, holding up a mirror. In the reflection of this mirror, we see the 6 realms. So many of you will have seen that kind of image, the traditional image of the 6 realms. You have a circle, and then a sort of demonic figure around the edges. Well, that's Yama, the sort of Buddhist version of the judge of the dead. the one who looks after when beings die. Then Yama is the sort of the judge or the administrator or the sorter to what realm those beings go to. But it's very significant, also known as Mahakala, which means great time. But it's very significant that it's a mirror. It's what's being held up is a mirror, so that the six realms in that mirror, you're seeing us. That's what you do in a mirror. You see yourself. You see your own world. You see what you are. So that and that sometimes is missed. That what's being looked at is your life. You're looking at yourself in the mirror. So generally the painting shows Yama, the ruler of the dead, holding up a mirror. In the reflection of this mirror we see the six realms. It's to be understood that Yama is very fair. When people die, they go to see Yama, and he asks if they paid heed to the messengers that he sent them to the realm of humans, to warn them about mortality, these messengers being old age, sickness and death. He then asks them to recall any of their good deeds, and these are written down. Then the bad deeds are recounted too. He rejoices when someone has lived skillfully and has made good karma. They are then conducted to the fortunate realms, while those who lived in bad ways go to the unfortunate realms. And incidentally, this is not just commentarial folklore. This is also the teachings that you find in the middle-length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya. I think it's called I'm not sure which number. It's called the Devadutta Sutta, and it describes exactly that, going to meet Yama, and Yama says, "Did you receive my messages? I sent several messengers to warn you about the world of birth and death. Did you notice the messengers?" And they say, "What messengers?" "Okay, well, we need to talk." So, "Oh yes, I got the message." So then they are more clued in. But that's why the old age, sickness and death, and then the renunciate, the samana, is the fourth of the messengers. People who are near death say their whole life flashes in front of their eyes. It seems that Yama is present in our minds. We judge ourselves. Who could know us better? Actually, the six realms are not about divine judgment. They portray the laws of karma operating in the sensory realm, a map of causes and then inevitable effects. Cosmology, like myth, is a convention. It depicts broad and immutable truths that are beyond our power to affect. We can create good karma or bad karma, but all karma is going to have its effect, vipaka, and all of it comes up for review. In fact, we create so much karma that Yama visits us while we're alive, and we're temporarily dispatched to heaven and hell accordingly. Yama stops visiting when, through insight, we stop creating karma, through no longer basing our actions on the me and mine of self-view. And in the Sutta Nipata, the Buddha says, if you give up looking at yourselves as a soul, as a fixed and special identity, then you will have given yourselves away to go beyond death. It's in the Questions of Mogaraja. If you give up looking at yourselves as a soul, as a fixed and special identity, then you will have given yourselves away to go beyond death. So then Ajahn Sucitto carries on. I've modified the traditional picture to accommodate this section of the sutta. Here I use the image to depict birth into mind states in this life. In the center is reminding us that the realms can only be realized and understood as impermanent by those who are centered in themselves, and hence also at the center of the realms. He's sitting right in the middle of it all, looking rather haggard, it's true, but actually recognizing all this stuff and seeing it as conditioned phenomena, he lets it arise and pass away. Generally speaking, it has been noted that Ajahn Sucitto does demons and misery much better than he does radiance and devas. It gets better though. All these paintings took about 4 years to do. So his contorted demons at the beginning are very, very convincing, and his devas are a little bit worrying in the early part. But by the time you get to the end, there's all these sort of beautiful washes of lilac-coloured light and great open spaces. So the bright forces had their effect upon the artist as well as the work proceeded. So it's much more elegant and bright and spacious. So this he's talking about, have Kondanna right at the center with the big eye right in the middle of his chest. The other four of the group of five, the other four of the group of 5 monks are looking outwards, thinking, "Oh, that was a really good teaching." They may be gladdened and respectful, worshipping it all, but they haven't actually seen it in themselves. It's still out there. So during that, the Dhammacakka Sutta, the verse on the turning of the wheel, the Four Noble Truths and the Middle Way, Kondanna was the only one who developed insight. He's the only one who entered the stream at that time. So the other four had not understood to the same degree. And it wasn't until the Anattalakkhana Sutta, the second discourse, that they all became arahants at that time. So during that, the result of the first discourse was just the disciple Kondanna entering the stream. To them, perhaps, the concept of change refers to the realm of nature, the 4 seasons, symbolized by the changing state of the plant life in the 4 quadrants of the picture. So again, you have the 4 of them sort of looking away from the center, and they've got the little plant things in the corners there. He's talking little floral arrangements that they're representing the 4 seasons of the year. Snowy there, and then autumn there, and summer there, and spring there, I think. To see change in such a way is a useful reflection. It reminds us that our bodies too must go through seasons. However, understanding the change of nature doesn't have the same impact as the insight that the realms of our perceptions and feelings are bound to change. This insight brings the experience of transiency into this moment and into what we take ourselves to be. And when we experience who we are as a constant flux, the sense of identification with any phase or aspect of that flux is undermined. There's another quote from Udana. Oh, here, this is the teaching that the Buddha gave to Meghiya. Maintain in being the perception of impermanence for the purpose of eliminating the self-view. For when one perceives impermanence, the perception of not-self becomes established. And when one perceives not-self, one arrives at the elimination of the self-view, and that is Nibbana, here and now. That's the teaching to Meghiya. The lowest realm, the pits, is the bottom left-hand side of the wheel. According to tradition, there are 8 major hells, each with 16 auxiliary hells, each of which has innumerable minor hells. They range from the most pleasant and commodious hell, Sanjiva, where beings are killed and then brought back to life in a continual cycle, down through the hells of quote-unquote black rope, of crushing and smashing, of screaming, of great screaming, of fires, of great fires, to the lowest of them all, Avicii hell. This is the realm where matricides, parricides, murderers of arahants, those who cause a schism in the Sangha, and those who have raped a nun, and those who have shed the blood of a Buddha, spend incalculable periods of time. It defies description. And in the best book on the Buddhist cosmology from the Theravada tradition is called The 3 Worlds According to King Ruang, which we have a copy of in the library. When it gets into the description of the hell realms, you get a very graphic and lengthy description of the sort of first layer of the hell realms, and then for the bottom, the lower 7 hells, it says they're so awful they're all totally indescribable, so we won't even try. All the various hells just at the top level are exotically miserable, as he describes, but everything below that, so they're so awful, they're undescribably ghastly, so we won't even give it a try. Anyway, the kind of person who is humble enough to take guidance from this book isn't liable to go there. Can you breathe out? And anyone who is due for a spell there probably won't heed the warning. Avicii is the realm of suffering without respite. Other hells offer you a moment's break, like the space between having one shovel of blazing coal tipped down your throat and the next. It's hardly a vacation, but if you just come out of a Avicii, in a lesser hell, you'd probably feel that things were coming up roses. If you know that expression. Oh, great. Rather than unrelenting misery for incalculable eons, I'm getting a moment's break between different mouthfuls of red-hot coals. You get a couple of seconds before the next shovel gets poured down you. You say, wow, this is great. Things are really looking up. So, other hells offer you a moment's break, like the space between having one shovel of blazing coal tipped down your throat and the next. It's hardly a vacation, but if you've just come out of Avicii, in a lesser hell, you'd probably feel that things were coming up roses. That's how bad Avicii is. So, I haven't attempted to paint Avicii, just one of the ordinary hells. A river of fire, symbolizing what it feels like when you're really burning up with anger, or violent hatred, or pain. Opinions differ as to the next realm of decreasing order of misfortune. Some say it's the animal realm. Perhaps it isn't a neatly stacked system. Anyway, the next one I'll deal with is the realm of hungry ghosts, Peta. Abiding as a hungry ghost is like being in a barren desert, craving food and water. They have great fat bellies, but very skinny necks and tiny mouths, which makes it impossible for them to get enough to eat. They're always in a state of craving. That's the place for swindlers, cheapskates, people who oppress the poor, and totally selfish beings. If you're addicted to drugs or liquor, this realm is the place you're headed for. Take note. The telltale signs of the Petaloka start to manifest for those who are even psychologically dependent on drink or drugs. In that hungry ghost realm of addiction, there's a lot of coarse selfishness, squalor, and neglect of the body, and a mind that inclines to self-pity. The reflection here is that if you're always thinking about yourself, it usually degenerates into whining about the bad deal you got and feeling hard done by. There's a lot of that complaining in the human mind anyway, especially wherever material values are prevalent. It doesn't take much to tumble into the realm of hungry ghosts. Conversely, when we expect little and bring forth our inner strength and resources from ourselves, we feel very full. And speaking about Ajahn Sucitto's demons, they're absolutely glorious hungry ghosts. One of his little pen and ink drawings down at the side. So, if you want to, it really is quite masterfully awful. The realm of the addict and the endless hunger that no matter how much is consumed, it's never enough. And in the painting itself, we have the hell realm, the river of fire down here, and then you have the desert over here with the hungry ghost. There's a green hungry ghost there in the corner, and you've got a sort of blazing fiery hell being off there in the bottom left, so that they're down in those lower realm areas. So it's now about 10 to 7, so there's a lot more to go, and so I'll leave the animals for tomorrow, and we can open things up for any questions or concerns or doubts. Yes.
I have a question about pets, because I have a cat, and I always wonder, how does she get out of this realm? Because she tends to hunt on toys, and so I don't buy these mouses for her anymore, but then she starts to hunt on our feet. So it's kind of hopeless, because I wonder, how can she ever change her behavior in order to be reborn in another realm?
Well, that's why it's good not to get born as an animal. You know, there's one of the teachings that the Buddha gave that he's an absolute flat-out genius in terms of coming up with these images that really get your attention. So he said, if you took a wooden ring, a ring of wood with a hole in the center, and you tossed it into the sea, so that it floats around all the seas of the world, all the oceans. And he said, and so there's a blind turtle that lives in the ocean, And once every 100 years, it comes up to the surface to take a breath. That turtle is more likely to put its head through the wooden ring of that ring floating around all the oceans of the world. That turtle is more likely to put its head through the ring than an animal is to escape from or a being that's in the lower realms to get out of those lower realms. So it gets your attention, doesn't it? That's where that image comes from. It's in the Samyutta Nikaya. So it's very, very difficult, but not impossible, because it's as Ajahn Sucitto points there. It's like when you stop thinking about yourself and you act in a generous way, then you feel very full. So when an animal carries out an act of generosity, then they are able to break out of those realms, to be reborn in a higher realm. So in the Buddhist mythology, you have, say, there's a story when the Buddha was living in a place called Kosambi, and the monks in the monastery, the Gositarama, they got into a big argument, and they formed into two factions that were fighting with each other, and not with physical blows, but arguing and disagreeing with each other and blaming each other. And they wouldn't listen to the Buddha's instruction. And he tried over and over again to get them to settle their differences and talk things through and rejoin, but they wouldn't listen. They said, "Oh, please just look, you enjoy your solitude, we'll sort this out between us." So after several times of trying to get the monks to listen, the Buddha said, "No, forget it." And he just packed his alms bowl and his robes, and he left without telling anyone and without taking leave of the Sangha, without taking an attendant with him. He just walked, left them. And so then he went off to stay in this forest called Parileya, the Parileika forest. And for 3 months he lived in this forest, and he was looked after by a monkey and an elephant. So the elephant used to get water from the pond and to bring water for the Buddha, and also so he could have a shower. Yeah. And the monkey brought him fruit. Would pick fruit and nuts and stuff from the trees and bring food for the Buddha to eat. And it's said that at the end of that rains retreat, when the Buddha went traveling along, then the monkey died and was immediately reborn in the heavenly realm. And there's a stupa in India near Vesali. There's a stupa for that monkey. So after it died, then it was cremated, and there's a special stupa. I stayed in Vesali for about a week. I didn't see the monkey stupa, but it's in that area. So that's legend. But also in more modern times, this current age, there's this very wonderful monk who was the oldest Theravada monk in the world, apparently, called Lumpu Sopa. And he was born in 1895, and he died a couple of years ago. So he was about 117 when he died. And he came from northeast Thailand, from the Sakonnakorn area, and he left when he was a young monk, went on Tudong back in about 1920. He went on Tudong, and he travelled through Thailand and India and all through Burma and China and all around. And he was away on Tudong for about 50 or 60 years. And anyway, and then he wound up back in his home village. Oh, we thought you were dead long ago. He'd never even written a letter. Yeah. But one of the stories that he told about his travels was, he said he was staying in a cave, and he woke up in the middle of the night, and he had this very, very strange sensation in his legs. And he looked down, and he could see that he was being swallowed by a python. That this python with a reticulated jaw, and they can open up their mouths, and it had both his feet and the lower part of his legs were in the mouth of this python. And so he was a very composed monk, and so he formed this thought in his mind. He said, "Dear friend, I realize that you have the need to eat, and so I don't wish to interrupt you in that, but I have made a vow that I will realize full enlightenment in this lifetime. And if you can guarantee that I will achieve full enlightenment before you finish swallowing me, this is a true story, please carry on swallowing. If, however, you cannot guarantee that by swallowing me, I will, before that process is complete, I will have not yet achieved complete enlightenment, then I would advise you to desist and to give up your attempt to swallow me. And according to his account, the snake stopped eating him and slowly reversed, and then went out of the cave. Naturally, he spent the rest of the night in meditation, as one would after a very interesting experience like that. And then when he came out at dawn, when he came out of the cave to go on the alms round, he saw the snake was up in a tree and it had died. And and his understanding was that because the snake created such good karma of letting him live, then it was able to launch itself out of that coarse realm in order to be born in a more fortunate existence. So it's through those acts of generosity, or being able to restrain the animal instincts that the animals are to break out of the confines of that realm. Of course, the animals there's a huge spectrum. Being a bed bug is not the same as being an elephant or a whale, But some animals obviously have much higher functions, much more complex systems. So it's not just a single thing, but generally speaking, the animal, that's the defining characteristic of the animal realm. It's very, very difficult for them to get perspective on their impulses. So self-interest is very, very strong force in the animal realm. The animals can show compassion for their own species, but it's very, very rare for animals to show compassion for a different species. But they can do. And sometimes you find animals that will adopt or will look after other ones, or altogether. They'll kind of make friends, and they will look out for each other. But it is rare. Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Every little helps. Yeah. What about sharing merit with animals? Yeah, it's going to help a little bit, but it's the conditioning is very strong, so but that's also a basic principle. You can have a huge pile of sand and a little shovel, but if you keep digging with your little shovel, then sooner, if you keep working at it, then the big pile of sand can be removed. So sharing merit and well wishing is something that can be of some benefit. Continuing the chapter called What Kondanna Knew, and we were going through the 6 realms, and just been through the hell realms and the realm of the hungry ghosts. This is the realm of addiction, and then going on to the animal realm. The animal realm is also an unfortunate one. For those who are fond of some animals, or regard them as pure and innocent, reference to the animal realm as a lesser abiding can seem unfair. I'm not condemning animals. In fact, the Bodhisattva took many animal births and lived skillfully within those limitations. However, animal life involves severe limitations. Most animals spend their time in a realm of fear. They fear death and starvation. They are bound to a particular habitat which they cannot farm or improve very much. They are at the mercy of the weather, the forces of nature, and human beings, as well as predators. And they are constrained by territorial and breeding instincts which put them through all kinds of trials. Some can latch on to finer or more comfortable modes of existence and ways of living skillfully, either through their own conduct or as a result of association with human beings. Yet, this association can be utterly wretched, as when animals are kept for food, or are treated as passive objects of someone's moods and whims. In the context of the six realms, the animal world symbolizes the volition that is associated with reproduction, eating and killing. Animal karma is more or less what you have to practice with having a physical body. However, the karma is not always so severe. Selfless and kind actions seem to be possible in some animals. It's a bit gross at times, but it's not an unworkable position. So that's his synopsis of the animal realm. And so, to reiterate, though, even though these are spoken about in mythological language, speaking about realms that the mind can migrate to from one life to another, it's also important that it's a mirror that we're looking into, that the King Yama, Mahakala, is holding up a mirror, and we're looking at ourselves. And so these six realms, they're representing the different moods and attitudes that we all can experience. So when the mind is preoccupied by animalistic concerns, fear of physical danger, protecting your territory. Say maybe Annie is very protective of her front center seat, and she comes along to the reading, and then Kang is sitting in her seat like, how dare you, that's my patch. And Christopher Titmuss was telling me he's a Dhamma teacher that likes to stir people up. He's always he enjoys a bit of confrontation and challenge, and likes to get people wrong-footed and see what they do with it. He and the recently departed Ruth Dennison are very similar in that kind of a style. And so Christopher, during the course of a retreat, he would often sort of change the routine or change things around and do things in different ways. And one day he went into the shrine room and moved everybody's seats around. So people had their own blankets or cushions or things. And there was that revolution. They could deal with all these other sort of challenging confrontations, or having him speaking in very sort of revolutionary or sort of disrespectful or disturbing ways, but moving the cushions, that's too much. It's like, not my cushion, Christopher. And so he had to back off, and they kind of rearrange the whole thing back to the way it was before. People couldn't deal with that. Even though before the retreat begins, it's nobody's space and nobody has a claim, but as soon as it's you got settled in and it's your spot, then it's amazing how that territorial imperative just takes over, and it's like, how dare you move my blanket? Who moved my blanket? And we're ready to commit violence to somebody who moved our meditation cushion, on which we're trying to be peaceful. So that's the animal realm. Is like, that's my territory. Back off, or you're in trouble. If you want to know what it's like being born as an animal, so then being stuck in a particular realm is, if you live like an animal, if you live on instinct, you're obsessed with fear and territory and sexual desire. If you're obsessed with food and just all your mind is on eating and recipes, and that's the animal realm. Food, protection, procreation, territory. That's the animal impulses, and so even though we think of ourselves as human beings and somewhat more elevated than that, a huge amount of the impulses that drive our lives and what fill the newspapers and the news media is a lot of this, the animal realm. Sexual desire, aggression, conflict, protection of territory, the kind of taking of other people's property. It's all right there. And this is, it's not something to be ashamed of or embarrassed about, because our conditioning, the human body, as Ajahn Sucitto says, it's like the animal karma is more or less what you have to practice within having a physical body. So we forget that you don't even have to scratch the surface, and this is an animal body. We need to breathe, we need to eat, We have the desires to procreate. We feel fear from threat. We get upset if someone annoys us or takes something that belongs to us. That those animal reactions occur, and that's conditioned right into our bodies, our chemistry, our ancestry. That even way back in our physical ancestry, back to monocellular ancestors, way back, 500 million years ago, when our great grandparents were like amoeba, or like the little sort of blue-green algae that form the things that are within our cells that actually take the oxygen and turn the oxygen into energy for the body are called mitochondria, and the mitochondria are in a way they're copies of, or they're the direct descendants of the blue-green algae that we all descended from. That's still that's within us. That's what, when we breathe in, that's what turns the oxygen into physical energy through brilliance of nature and the aerobic respiration. When those little algae figured out how to turn oxygen from being a poisonous pollutant into, which it was like an explosive and poisonous pollutant, because oxygen wasn't used to support life. Then a few of our ancestors figured out, hey, you can use this stuff. And they learned how to use oxygen to derive energy, and then took over the planet. So that's still what we carry within us. And even back in the monocellular level of our lives and our ancestors, they still have those same basic impulses. Can I eat it? Is it going to eat me? Can I mate with it? That's the news, right? That's what fills our newspapers, is that this is my patch, back off. Can I eat you? Are you going to eat me? And are you a mating partner, or are you interested in me, or am I interested in you? And that is what forms about 90% of the human preoccupations. Even though we like to think of ourselves being a bit more elevated, that's a huge amount of what takes up our attention. So being born in the animal realm is the mind absorbing and giving those impulses a substantial value, rather than recognizing, well, this is just the feeling of hunger, or this is just being annoyed at somebody moved what's conventionally called my cushion. It's the capacity to notice those impulses and not be born into it, not caught up, is refraining from being born in the animal realm. But if you believe them, how dare you, or well, that's an attractive one, or don't touch me, then you take those as absolute realities, then that's life in the animal realm. So the mind being motivated by what we can also call the reptile brain, that drives all these sort of conceptual impulses that we all experience. So then the next realm, after the animals, if we go back to our picture, is the asuras, which Ajahn Sucitto translates as the jealous titans. So this is up in the top right-hand corner as you look at it, this one here. So they are the asura, and they're also considered a bit of a low realm, even though they are a kind of devas. A slightly more fortunate realm is depicted at the top right. This is the realm of the asuras, or jealous titans. They once lived in a lower heaven until Indra, the Devata king of the lower heavens, threw them out for being so rowdy. Now they are at the bottom of Mount Meru, in the background, while most of the Devata are in palaces up on the hill. How many... it's all about real estate, you see. So who gets to have their house on the hill, and who are down in Flea Bottom, down in the kind of lower reaches of the kind of grungy area down by the docks. Who gets to be up on the hill with the nice view and the fresh breezes. So the jealous titans at the bottom of Mount Meru, in the background, where most of the devatas are in palaces up on the hill. Although some of the titans have palaces and pleasure parks, they're jealous of the greater splendor of the deva realms and the blissful, carefree lives of the devata. So they war on them. It's actually only their envy, anger and aggression that deprive them of the happiness of the heavens. Humans can empathize with the Asura realm. Like Asuras, humans can believe that it's their right to have whatever they want, and they become petulant when they feel that somebody else has got a better deal. The love of power is an Asura trait, and a human one too. There are those who like to attack the innocent or the defenseless, because in some ways they are envious of that purity and hate to be reminded of it. Their relative good fortune manifests as seeking something higher and more refined. Their unhappiness comes from the way that they try to attain it. We don't have to wait for the death of the body. In this very life, we can notice that acting on such impulses is a ticket to the Asura state of being. So the jealous gods, the Asuras, so that even though they are quite powerful and potent in many ways, it's because their minds are consumed with what somebody else has got. So either jealous and envious of what other benefits and happiness others have, and they want to get it, or they want to spoil it, or they want to mess it up for them. Also just the exercise of power for its own end is part of the Asura realm, just wanting to be tough, wanting to be on top, wanting to be the strongest. And there's whole sections of the teachings in the Samyutta Nikaya. They have accounts of the warring between the Asuras and the Devas, and sometimes the Asuras win and sometimes the Devas win, and that's back and forth and back and forth. But as Ajahn Sucitto points out, it's that quality of jealousy and negativity, that's what actually makes them miserable, and so that the feeling of separation from the lack of the happiness that the Devas have is really their own doing, because their minds are focused on, I want a bigger boat, or like, how dare you, who do you think you are? And trying to be more powerful or stronger or more dominant than the other, so they are always unhappy unless they're kind of coming out on top. And there is there's an Asura called Vepachiti, and there was an example that the Buddha is giving. He says, after the Devas went to war with the Asuras, and Indra had won the battle, and he captured this Asura chieftain called Vepachiti, and they created this kind of chains that, as long as Vepachiti was resentful and said, how dare you, who do you think you are, you can't lock me up like this, and then the chains got tighter and tighter. But as soon as he expressed loving kindness and respect, well, thank you very much, I know we lost the fight, but you're treating me quite well, and thanks for the food and the nice lodgings, then the chains would fall off. But as soon as he got resentful and angry, then the chains would come back, and the more angry and self-righteous that his mind became, then the tighter the chains became. So it's a pretty obvious symbol. And the reason why the Buddha tells that story is he said, even though there was the bonds that tied Vepachiti were extraordinarily powerful, the bonds that Mara keeps beings in are even stronger still. That Mara holds the minds of infinite numbers of beings in an even tighter bondage than the chains, the bonds that held the Asura Vepachiti. The world of humans comes next. As a venue for working out liberation, it is more fortunate than that of the Asuras, because Buddhas and their teachings arise there. It is the perfect place for enlightenment, though in sensory terms it's less pleasant and refined than the next realm up. We'll come back to it in a moment. We'll come back to the human realm. Above the world of human beings is the Devaloka, the 6 heavenly realms of refined sense pleasure. These range from the ones where the pleasure is mostly derived through living in places that are visually and physically delightful, to a refined bliss that is largely of a mental nature. This vignette is a picture of a Gandhava, a heavenly musician. In the lower Devaloka, Gandhava play to the Devas, more formally known as Devata, only when they're asked to do so, and they stop when they're not wanted, unlike musicians in the human realm. Deva means shining one, and also applies to beings outside the Devaloka. The formless gods, or Brahmas, are a kind of super-deva, belonging to a higher stratum of existence within the world system of birth and death. Special humans, such as awakened ones, even kings and ministers, perhaps as a politic gesture, are referred to simply occasionally as deva. As in all states of being, the state of consciousness is the determinant, and that of the devata is more sublime and refined. It's not so refined that it rules out quarrelling and arguments and jealousies in the devaloka, or the need to protect the realm against the asuras. And also, eventually, there is death. If you've noticed, human happiness and success have those characteristics too. So just as the world of the asuras is a realm of jealousy and aggression, and so it's the kind of, in the human world, this is where you've got a lot, you might have a successful life, you might be highly qualified, you might have a nice home, you might have plenty of money, but it's never enough. And you're annoyed that you live in a fantastic house, you've got a lovely big garden, but you're obsessed with the way that your neighbour cuts the hedge, and or the way how they park their car, and you can't you can't put that down. Even though you're very fortunate, you can't enjoy your own good fortune because your mind is obsessed with all the things that are wrong and negative about others. Devas are the Deva realm is where you can really enjoy pleasant things. So that the mind that's bright as a Deva is that of having a pleasant and comfortable existence, but not basing that upon a negativity, or not being, say, caught in a kind of destructive or jealous states. So in the human world, the Deva world would be like people who are aesthetes, who their mind is focused on just the enjoyment of sensual pleasure. They might be musicians or artists, or just they can have a beautiful home, or sort of dressing in very elegant ways. They might have a lot of money, and so that the mind is focused on refined sensual pleasure or refined mental states from can be meditation, but also just sensual pleasure like art or music or clothing or aesthetics of various kinds. But it's a kind of drunkenness, and there's a passage where the Venerable Ananda Maitreya, who was this very wonderful elder Sri Lankan monk, used to like quoting, which he translated, I think the Pali is Sabhe Deva Mahamulanti, and he says, which translated means these devatas, they are utterly foolish fellows. That they're drunk on their happiness, like someone who's rich or has grown up in a privileged family. They just assume that the servants will look after it. That's just when you want something, then it just appears. And there's this a famous incident. I think it was Anuruddha when he was a prince. He was very, very pampered as a child, and he'd never known hunger. And so when he was playing with some friends, and as a child, and he kept sending the servant back to, he was at his friend's house, and then the servant that was with him, he kept sending the servant back to his home and asking his mother to send honey cakes. And so he was playing with his mates for hours and hours, and the servant kept bringing more cakes, and they would scarf them all down, and then he'd send the servant off, and he'd come back with more cakes. And then after several hours of this, then the servant came back, and he said, well, where are the cakes? What kind of cakes have you brought? And he said, Nati Puvan, which means there aren't any cakes. He said, oh, I never heard of them before. Well, where are they? He said, well, Nati Puvan. Yeah, I know what they're called. You just told me, but where are they? And so he thought there was this kind of cake called there isn't any cakes. Nati Puvan means there aren't any cakes, and so he thought that was a name because he'd never known wanting something and not getting it. So he thought Nati Puvan was a special kind of cake. And so his mother, the servant went back and said, I told him. So the mother sent the servant back and said, "Tell him, no, there aren't any cakes. That means there aren't any cakes. So come home." And so that was awakening of insight for Anuruddha. So that the deva-like existence is a kind of foolish drunkenness. You're lost in this realm of privilege and comfort, and you just expect it's going to be there all the time. And when devas reach the end of their life, then they start to smell. They get the stories describe them getting smelly under their armpits, and other devas don't want to be near them because it means, oh dear, what awful. And the petals of the flowers that they live on start to wilt, and so everyone sort of turns away and leaves them, and then they pass away. So it's the kind of giddy world of privilege where you grow up and you assume everyone went to a school like you did, or everyone has as many clothes that fills the cupboards like you have, and that they have all the food and things, and it's just there because it's there. And mummy will look after it, or the servants will clear up, or don't do that. The servants will pick it up, and so that it's that empty-headed assumption of comfort and pleasure. And even if you're not rich or powerful or good-looking or have tasty food, you can still be lost in the deva realms of, say, just all of your happiness depends on listening to music, and that you think that's the ultimate happiness is listening to music. And a couple of years ago, I was leading a retreat here, and was at one point I was giving a talk on this, the theme of how everything is unsatisfactory, and that even when things are pleasant or beautiful, the reason why they're dukkha is because you can't sustain them; they can't remain pleasant forever. And one of the people on the retreat, who's a professional musician and a composer, took issue with that. Said, no, there is no unsatisfactoriness in Bach. Bach is perfect. It's not dukkha. You don't understand, Ajahn. It's not dukkha. Bach is perfect. So I tried a few inroads, like, well, if you went deaf, then you couldn't hear it anymore. Then you wouldn't be able to hear Bach anymore. Well, I can remember it. Okay. Well, if you'd heard the same Bach, piano piece or the well-tempered clavier or whatever, you play it 100,000 times in a row, and you're not allowed to stop playing it day and night. All your waking hours, you've got to play the same tune over and over again. Well, that's fine. Can't think of anything nicer. So I kept trying a few angles, and I thought, okay. Eventually I realized, well, this person is absolutely determined to take refuge in Bach. So I figured, well, he'll probably find out somewhere along the way that there is an element of unsatisfactoriness. But that's a real deva existence that you can't imagine that it's not going to be totally satisfactory all of the time. And that I don't know how many of you were here when we had the funeral for Ray. And I was explaining, as I often do with funerals, that the reason why we chant the Abhidhamma, the mythology behind why we chant the Abhidhamma passages at a funeral, is because the story goes that after the Buddha's enlightenment, then one rains retreat, he went up to the Tavatimsa heaven to teach the deva who'd been his mother. His mother passed away 7 days after he was born and was reborn in the Tavatimsa heaven. And so he wanted to go and teach her this devata who had been his mother, Mahamaya. And so he went up to the Tavatimsa heaven. But devas, their life is so refined, they can't understand the Four Noble Truths. And Ajahn Sucitto will probably get to that in the section about the human realm. They can't understand the Four Noble Truths because dukkha is invisible to them. It's like, dukkha? What dukkha? Peel me a grape. You can't. It's just one pleasant thing after another. It's like, what are these Buddhists talking about? I mean, so the Buddha, it's said that's why he created the matrix of teachings of the Abhidhamma, describing all the aspects of the mental and physical realms in these long and intricate lists. Say, these are the mental factors, this is what causes the different mind states to arise, this is how they're sustained, this is how they fade away, this is how they affect each other. And what we're chanting is just like chapter headings, really. And but the whole Abhidhamma, it said that that was what the Buddha taught, this Devata, because they can't. Dukkha has no meaning, so it's like taking the bonnet, opening up the bonnet of the car and saying, okay, this is how the engine works. Let's take it apart piece by piece, and then explaining all the parts, putting it all together, and saying that's what this condition of existence is. And this is how it works. And so then helping the Devata to get insight through analytical knowledge, and not through dukkha, because it is not being able to feel it or know it. It's out of reach, like speaking in a language. Like if I started speaking to you in Navajo, that if I could speak it, that probably no one here would understand it. The words might be meaningful, but it's what's he saying? I can't understand a word of it. It has got no meaning. So to talk about dukkha and dukkha nirodha to a devata is like speaking in a language they can't understand. So you have to cast insight into the nature of reality in a form that the devatas could understand. So it's very rare that when you, in the scriptures, I can't even think of a particular incident, there might be one or two, where the Buddha gives a devata teachings. Usually they're very inspired and gladdened, and they go away. But it's very unusual for the Buddha to give a teaching to a devata or a Brahma god, and then they become a stream enterer, or then insight arises. And it's because the human realm, as Lumpur Sumedho would often say, that the human realm is the perfect realm for enlightenment, and that's regarded this way in all different Buddhist traditions, in the northern and the southern Buddhist worlds, whether you're in Tibet or in China or Japan or Laos or Sri Lanka or Thailand or wherever, that it's the same mythology pertains, that the human realm is the best realm for enlightenment. And that's why Buddhas always appear in the human realm. They don't get born in Deva realms as a Buddha. Their last life and their total enlightenment is always in the human realm, because the human realm is the most fertile region. And as Lumpur Sumedho would say, because you have the body of an animal and the mind of a god, so that no matter how absorbed you get in the Deva realms, the Deva states as a human being, you still got to go to the bathroom. You've still got to breathe. You still have to deal with your family. You've got to pay taxes. There's all that stuff that you can't get away from. And also, even though you can experience the hell realms of anger and the cravings of addiction and the impulses of the animal realm, you still have the reflective ability. You can't totally get lost in it. You can get absorbed for a certain amount of time. But even people who are caught in the most brutal of states, like you're a professional football hooligan, that you like to go to football matches and start fights with people, still there's a core of humanity there that you can't get away from. You might try very hard, drink vigorously to get away from it, but I'm speaking from personal experience. Even the people who are caught up in those very, very coarse realms, they can't fully switch off that reflective quality. So that's why the human realm is like the sort of the warm tide pools between the shore and the sea. It's where our ancestors, the blue-green algae, and they say developed the whole evolutionary process was richest at that meeting point of the land and the sea, the warm tide pools. So the human realm is like that littoral zone between the world of the devas and the gods and the world of the animals. And because of that fertile mixture, that's why our the potential is so great in the human realm. So continuing, the human realm, center left, is the strangest of them all, the one that really stretches the imagination to believe in. It's very Ajahn Sucitto-esque. So, the human realm is the most karma productive realm. The human mind can move between the 6 realms with relative ease. It's possible for a human to be fully established in a miserable or blissful realm by living either in depravity or in a kind and scrupulous manner. They have the choice. It takes a little time, during which the body has to die away, but nothing compared to the innumerable millennia it would take to get away from a middling hell to a not even top-rate Deva Loka. The karmic potential of humans is so powerful that they can even get previews of the other realms and assume the corresponding characteristics just by inclining their intentions and activities within the lifespan of the body. So, humans are sometimes like hell beings, sometimes like hungry ghosts, sometimes like animals, sometimes like asuras, and sometimes like the Devata. No wonder human beings are so confused. And there's also, Lumpur Sumedho would frequently quote that passage from W.B. Yeats's poem Sailing to Byzantium, which I think I quoted a few weeks ago, where he says, "Consume my heart away, sick with desire and fastened to a dying animal, it knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity." Consume my heart away, sick with desire and fastened to a dying animal, it knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity. So it's one of Lumpur's favourite lines, and it's reflecting on that. Yeah, you have this mind of a God that aspires to the eternal, the infinite. Gather me into the artifice of eternity. Swallow me. Let me dissolve into the great vastness. And yet, there's this. The heart is sick with desire and fastened to a dying animal. So Yeats didn't like growing old. He tried very hard not to. But that's that resenting that anguish, the pull of the infinite and the beyond. Yet this fastened to a dying animal. Also, one thing, I'm not sure if Ajahn Sucitto goes into it in detail, but the characteristic of the human realm, the Manusa Loka, there's two different kinds of people. There's a Pugala and a Manusa. So a Pugala is if you have a human body, but you're not really a human. So to qualify for the Manusa Loka, the human realm, it means you live by the 5 precepts. So if you don't live by the 5 precepts, you're not actually according to Buddhist psychology, you're not really a human. So what qualifies for the Manusa Loka, that's the how it's characterized. So if you still like to go out to the pub on a Saturday night, you're not in the Manusa Loka at that point. It's some people find this harsh, but that's what qualifies it, because the particular quality of the human realm is that moral sensitivity. That's what is part of it, along with having the body of an animal and the mind of a god. The way that manifests as a loka, a domain of dwelling, is that what makes us human, rather than just having a human body and being a hungry ghost or an animal or whatever, or a devata. What makes us a human is that there is that moral sensitivity. It's there is that quality of hiriotapa. To continue. Perhaps it is due to this almost constant confusion that human beings have the urge to get beyond all these realms, unlike other beings. Humans can never become fixed in anything for too long. Even one of the nicer and least demanding hell realms requires a tenancy of tens of millions of years, and the heavenly realms are of like duration. In the Brahmaloka, the smallest unit of time is trillions of years. Human beings can have previews of all of these, and the opportunity to reflect on the possibilities of becoming anything in the light of impermanence. This is one of the aspects of Kondanna's realization, that all the realms of becoming arise and pass away, and as they are impermanent states which offer no respite from becoming something else, they are unsatisfactory. That kind of perspective allows humans the opportunity to cultivate the very state of awareness which can notice and not be drawn into self-creative karma, and in knowing that, be set free from all the restless delusion of becoming. Did you follow that? I'll read it again. It's an essential point. Human beings can have previews of all of these. As we've been saying, that these are reflecting different states of mind that we can all get lost in. Jealousy, rage, desire, intoxication, inspiration, desperation, all of those. Human beings can have previews of all of these and the opportunity to reflect on the possibilities of becoming anything in the light of impermanence. So, like looking at the board of snakes and ladders, there's a lot of ladders going up and snakes going down. We realize we can get absorbed in any of these different realms, that they're all open to us because everything changes. This is one aspect of Kondanna's realization, that all the realms of becoming arise and pass away. And as they are impermanent states, which offer no respite from becoming something else, they are unsatisfactory. So you can't get born in a realm and then never leave it. That there is only if there's total enlightenment that happens in that realm, then. But otherwise, in every realm that the mind is born into, it's unsatisfactory. So, and there's a very compelling teaching where the Buddha is speaking about being born in the Brahmalokas, and how being is born in one of these arupa lokas, the high refined, the sort of top four Brahma realms have no form at all. There are formless Brahma realms, and the lengths of lifespans are countless numbers of eons of sort of great big bangs and big crunches, and universes arising and passing away during the space of a single lifetime. But it says that, but at the end of that lifespan, when that life comes to an end, then that being that was born in the Brahma realms can be reborn in any realm, and that lifetime, even though it was countless hundreds of thousands of kalpas long, is just a memory. If it can be remembered, it's just a memory, and it's as if there was nothing. So that even if those countless eons of bliss in the high Brahma realms, when it's over, pop, it's just a memory. That kind of perspective allows humans the opportunity to cultivate the very state of awareness which can notice and not be drawn into self-creative karma, and in knowing that, be set free from all the restless delusion of becoming. Now, in the more traditional representations of the Bhavachakra, the wheel of becoming, in each of the realms, each of the 6 realms, there's a Buddha, usually a standing Buddha. And so in the Deva realms, the Buddha is carrying a musical instrument, a veena, like a lute. In the hell realm, the Buddha's got a flame in his hand. In the animal realm, the Buddha's got a sutta, a Dhamma book, or is teaching. In the hungry ghost realm, he's got a flask of nectar or food. So in each of the realms, you have a Buddha, and the Buddha is carrying something that can convey the teachings of the beings in those realms. So in the Deva realm, he's playing a musical instrument. Oh, it's Bach, and the hell realms, he's got fire and so on. But it's Ajahn Sucitto doesn't have it represented here in this particular image, but that represents that same thing, that there's a Buddha can appear in every realm. So that means you can be aware, you can have intense states of anger or intense states of craving or sensual delight and bliss, but there's still that capacity to be aware and to know and to be able to reflect upon that condition, so that in the sort of figure represented in that the figure of the traditional Bhavachakra, the wheel of becoming, there's a Buddha in every realm, which means that every state of mind can be known. Some of them are far more difficult to get insight into. Obviously, down in the hell realms, there's seething anguish in the hell of unrelenting misery. It's difficult to get any perspective. But also, interestingly enough, up in the high Brahma realms, there's a particular sutta in the middle-length discourses where the Buddha's talking about the development of insight, and he says that for the advice for the meditator is as the mind is going into jhana, first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, the person meditating reflects, this is conditioned, this is a dependent state, and therefore it's something that's gross, but there is that which is beyond it. This is a state that's arisen and passes. And that same phrase is repeated for first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, then up into the formless jhanas of the realm of infinite consciousness, nothingness, and infinite space, and so on. And so that the first three of those formless Brahma realms, so that which are represented by those formless jhanas, the realm of infinite space, infinite consciousness, the realm of nothingness or no-thingness, the mind still can reflect on that state. But then he says that beyond that, the fourth of the arupa jhanas, which is called the state of neither perception nor non-perception, and then the one beyond that, which is called the cessation of perception and feeling, the mind is too refined to be able to reflect, so that insight can't be developed in those sort of super high jhana states, because the absorption is so total and the quality of bliss is so great that, according to the teaching, that it's impossible for there to be that reflective wisdom, which is a kind of interesting point. I forget the exact number of the sutta, but you can, if you're interested, I'm sure you can track it down. But it's that phrase is repeated. This is conditioned and thus gross, but there is this which is beyond it, and so refinement, ultra refinement, can be as much of an obstruction to wisdom and to insight as unremitting misery. Probably doesn't affect your day very much, but you might think so. But when you have a mouthful of that, your favourite food, and you go, wow, that's the sort of worldly version of the neva sanya, nasanya, arupa jhana. The mind is completely absorbed in that flavour. Or if your feelings have just been hurt by that person, you're like, how dare they? And in that moment, the mind's absorbed in that hell realm, and there's no room for insight because of the mind is grabbed, is in the full flush of grabbing and identifying with that negative state. To continue. But the human realm is a strange one. It is here that Buddhas always arise and give most of their teachings. It's the perfect place for seeing the need to abandon all possibilities of becoming. Yet most humans feel they have just got the wrong blend. Okay, follow that? It's the perfect place for seeing the need to abandon all possibilities of becoming, yet most humans feel they've just got the wrong blend. So this particular kind of becoming didn't really quite do it. It's a good recipe, but it's not really quite as good as it could have been. So we just changed the recipe a bit, and then we'll have it. Then we'll get it. So it's that. This is just a bit of an unlucky break. It's a bit unfortunate, but next time, and then next time, and next time, it'll really come together, I'm sure. Yama constantly sends his messengers to remind humans of the limitations of becoming, and that the human mind can experience the six realms readily. And yet, humans get stuck into being human. When they do, they don't use their agile minds to contemplate the common characteristics of phenomena. Instead of cultivating the serenity and vision that frees them from samsara, they hatch out new permutations of semi-heavenly, semi-animal, semi-hellish experiences, such as... That's three semis. It's 1.5 existences. Semi-heavenly, semi-animal, semi-hellish experiences, such as power politics, sport, romance, and entertainment. There goes your Friday night. Not for the monastics, of course. Yeah. None of us are planning on going out for dinner or the movies. So, we hatch out new permutations of these instead of abandoning becoming. This, then, is the drawback of all that karmic potential. Humans don't often consider the option of transforming. They're always restlessly creating this, trying that, rejecting this with all the refined discrimination of a devata, then grabbing that with all the blind instinct of an animal, feeling the pitiful yearning of a hungry ghost, and yet, like an asura, rankled at the prospect of another human being getting a better deal. Perhaps the most important thing that Kondanna had to realize is that the true life is one of being, not of becoming. This involves a profound letting go, the abandonment of identification with any aspect of the world of birth and death. However, after hearing this teaching, Kondanna only attained the first stage of enlightenment. His realization still needed to be developed. The sutta doesn't say what he had not let go of. Perhaps there was still an attachment to the sense of being the watcher, which appears changeless and could be mistaken for self. This may have been the case because soon after teaching this sutta, the Buddha gave a teaching specifically on the characteristic of not-self, the Anattalakkana Sutta. And with that further elucidation of the truth, all 5 of the group attained liberation. One might say that the first stage of enlightenment is the realization that there is no self within the sensory realm. If one also understands that there is no self outside of the sensory realm, then the abandonment goes a little deeper. There is nothing to become in the sense sphere or away from it. Just as there's nothing to be found within it, none of it has to be rejected. And there's a passage he quotes, a very well-known passage from the Sutta Nipata. A man with nothing in him that he grasps at as his, and nothing in him that he rejects as not his. So you don't grasp anything as being yourself, and you don't grasp anything as not being yourself. It doesn't grasp anything as being his, and doesn't grasp anything that is doesn't reject anything as not his. So there's not about just not having, but it's like having nothing is the same as having everything in some respects. The sage as the watcher of the 6 realms is only a position. It's not self. The 6 realms are the 6 realms are to be known without condescension, condemnation or denial. Condemnation is an aspect of self-view. We think that certain people really are evil, and we feel glad when they're punished. Awakened ones, on the other hand, experience the sense of regret that people become deluded and generate so much suffering. But what they know is that all realms of becoming are impermanent. The Buddha commented that even Devadatta, who tried to kill him and succeeded in drawing his blood, would, after languishing in the Avicii hell, eventually exhaust that vipaka, that resultant karma, and realize Buddhahood. So that's the legend or the myth is that Devadatta is at the moment down in the Avicii hells, but when that lifetime is over, then he will be born as a Pacceka Buddha, which is a Buddha who doesn't teach. So, after languishing in the Avicii hell, eventually he'd exhaust that vipaka and realize Buddhahood. He was just going through a bad patch. Supreme understatement and a very Sucitesque comment. Hence, the serenity of Buddhas is in the timeless present, when nothing is rejected. The awakened one experiences harmony in it all. There are the dark and the light, the positive and the negative sides of existence, all aspects of the way things are. The Buddha expounds a teaching that can fit all people and bring them out of their attachments. Hence, he is the bestower of blessings. The Blessed One puts sensory things in their right place. At the right time and in suitable ways, he teaches what is for the happiness and welfare of beings, and what actions and mind states are best avoided. This understanding applies to all the cycles of nature, the rhythm of creation and destruction. One learns how to generate skillful states within the limitations of nature. For our confused and conflicting world, this understanding is indeed a blessing. In the letter B of Bhagavad, I've drawn the Buddha with a giant cobra coiled around him. So this is up this the top there. This is the word Itamavocha Bhagava. So in that letter B at the top, there's a cobra with a very small Buddha, but the Buddha is there with the cobra. The Buddha is about a fifth the size of the cobra, which has got at least 3 heads. So a great naga. In the letter B of Bhagavad, I have drawn the Buddha with a giant cobra coiled around him. This alludes to the story that after his enlightenment, the Buddha was encircled by a giant hooded snake who protected him from severe weather. This signifies that the awakened mind is protected from the violence of nature when it has understood how to bring its own nature into balance. Those who live wisely and mindfully find themselves abiding in the most advantageous conditions that human and personal karma will allow. From this, 2 possibilities arise: either complete liberation, or, if attachments still remain, birth in a fortunate realm. If you're interested in birth and would like to know more about where the present karma is leading to, the next few paintings may be helpful. And that leads us into the whole section of the Deva realms, and because as this insight forms, then the Devas in Kondanna, and he becomes the first being to hear the Dhamma in this particular era, and to be at least partially liberated. Then the Devas start celebrating that the matchless wheel of the Dhamma has been set rolling. Or maybe the last point to pick up from these comments, where Ajahn Sucitto says, one might say that the first stage of enlightenment is the realization that there is no self within the sensory realm. There's a very fine essay written by Venerable Thanissaro, who's a publisher and writer of many, many Dhamma books, called No Self or Not Self. It's a very wonderful teaching, and it's, Ajahn Pasna and I copied it in its entirety in the book that we did called The Island About Nibbana, because what Ajahn Thanissaro points out is that you can't actually find a single place in the Pali Canon where the Buddha says there is no self. There's not a single instance where he says that. And when he's asked directly by Vacchagotta, is it the case that there is no self, then the Buddha remains silent. And then Vacchagotta asks, well, is it the case that there is a self? And again, the Buddha remains silent. So the only time the Buddha is asked that correct question directly, he refuses to answer. And then when Vacchagotta bows and takes his leave, having got silence for a reply, then Venerable Ananda, who's always trying to make everything all right with everybody, he's a sort of social fixer and arranger of people visiting the Buddha and helping people along. So he was a bit concerned, a bit upset by this, and said, "Oh, what was the case, Venerable Sir? Well, why did you not answer Vacchagotta? Because you could have given him a really good explanation, but you didn't say anything. And so, what was the reason? What was the cause that you didn't speak?" And then the Buddha says to Ananda, "Well, if when the wanderer Vacchagotta came and asked me, is there a self? If I said yes, would that have been in accord with my teachings that all dhammas, all phenomena are not self? No, it wouldn't. Okay. But then if when he asked me the question, is there no self? If I had said that's correct, there is no self, then he would have come to the conclusion, well, I had a self when I came here, and now the master tells me I haven't got one. And so he would have gone away more confused than when he arrived. Therefore, the appropriate response was silence. And that's the only time that the Buddha gets asked that question. And what he says over and over is Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, all dhammas, all phenomena are not self. But he doesn't. But that's more of a way of investigating the feeling of I and me and mine that coagulates, that gathers itself around the body, thoughts, feelings, memories, ideas, plans, intentions, regrets, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and all of our the everyday experience. So when we recite the Anattalakkana Sutta, which we did this morning, that when the Buddha is explaining that teaching, what he's saying is form is not self, the body is not self, feelings are not self. If feelings were self, then you could say, feelings be like this, don't be like that. Because when feelings are not self, then you can't say of them, be like this, don't be like that. And because they are not self, because they are subject to affliction, then they can't be said to be something that is our true essence, or the true have the true qualities of the Atman, or the Atta, which would be blissful and eternal and self. They are dukkha, impermanent, and not self. So that in the Buddha's time, just as now, they have in the Vedic expression of things, they talk about Sat Chit Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss, as the fundamental qualities of reality, or the Atman. And so the Buddha took the opposite. It's not being, consciousness, bliss. It's anicca, dukkha, anatta. It's impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. And rather than that being a sort of philosophical position, saying there is no self, the teaching on anatta is more like a set of tools that we can investigate and look at the feelings that, well, this is my body, I'm the owner, these are my thoughts, these are my words, these are my feelings, I feel them, nobody else does, this is what I am. And it's a way to help us look at that feeling of, this is what I am, this is me, this is mine. And then through that method of looking, and then being able to let go of what we're not, then what is real is what remains. So that then, but the thinking mind might say, well, I am the I am the Dhamma, I am the unconditioned, that's what I am. And but then that's just another concept that the mind has grabbed and said, I am this concept. And what the purpose of the teachings on anatta is helping that quality of clinging and identification to be seen and let go of, without creating a different kind of identification or clinging to replace it. So I would argue that Ajahn Sucitto is not 100% accurate when he says that when he makes that comment about the realization there is no self within the sensory realm, but rather that everything in the sensory realm is not self, which might seem like it's just splitting hairs or it's just semantics, but it does make a big difference. And as a thing that Luang Por Sumedho would often point out, that the teaching on not self is not a philosophical position, it's a toolkit. It's a means of investigation. It's like a lens that you can look through. So that's enough for today, and we'll get on to the Deva realms when we resume. But if there's any questions or things to clarify, please speak up. I realize I'm capable of producing a blizzard of words, so it's easy to be lost in a snowdrift of verbiage, but if there are any questions or things to clarify, please don't be shy.
May I ask, if we turn to the inner eye, sometimes we do have reflections with inside eye.
You mean the I-E-Y-E, or I as in I, me? What kind of I?
I wouldn't identify it. I would.
Well, you said inner eye, but what would
inner eye, yes, internal eye. Sometimes.
I'm not sure. How do you spell that kind of eye? Is that I? Inner
yes,
eye?
In between there is some sort of senses that I am referring to.
Well, it's not the Buddha speaking, but it's in a series of questions and answers. Then it's the question is, what is it that knows a cognizable object? And the response, I think it was Bhikkhuni Dhammadina who was speaking with her ex-husband. She was a nun, he was a layman, and he was asking her questions about Dhamma, and she said it's Panya Chaku, the eye of wisdom, is that which knows a knowable, a cognizable object. So that Panya Chaku, Panya is wisdom, Chaku is eye, so the eye of wisdom. So you can also say it's the quality of awareness, vijja, or there's different terms, they overlap. Jnana is knowledge or understanding, Panya, wisdom, Satipanya, mindfulness and wisdom, or Vijja, they all overlap. So when we chant the Dhammacakka Sutta, And you have this series of terms: Chakung Udapadi, vision arose; Jnanang Udapadi, knowledge arose; Panya Udapadi, wisdom arose. And so that there's this whole cluster of terms that the Buddha uses in that the Udapadi section, and so they resonate with each other. They overlap, so you can't say, well, how is Vijja different from Jnana? I mean, I'm sure people have written whole PhDs about that. The Buddha uses these sort of overlapping terms. So Chakung is the eye, so vision arose. Jnana is our word gnosis or knowledge is the same as that jnana. Panya, wisdom. Vijja, awareness, the opposite of avijja, ignorance, so knowing or awareness. Aloko just means light. Light arose. So that they're all related to light and vision and knowing, awareness, sort of different qualities. So that you can, all of those you can use to describe what's that knowing faculty. I prefer, Vijja is the one I like to use myself mostly.
The Buddha you portray, Ajahn, we get in the pictures, we have Buddhas in different realms. Often in a Theravada, sometimes it's explained that the Buddha is thought to be a human being, or say a special human being, not an eternal Buddha, an eternal being. But the realms you describe and the Buddha's depiction of those realms, they go a little bit beyond. There seems to be a contradiction because it seems to be that this person would be beyond a human being, maybe a human form, but to be able to realise those realms, unless they're a dream. If a person can go and talk to gods and go to different realms, and it's hard to have that depiction as not a human being.
Yes, indeed. Well, one of the four imponderables, the Achinteya, is the range of the mind of a Buddha. There you go. So file under imponderable. Okay, that's probably enough for today.